I'm trying to get all the achievements in the main Resident Evil games, and today I'll be completing one of the greatest and most influential action games of all time, Resident Evil 4, not once but twice. For the remake released in 2023, I'll have to complete the game on all difficulties while also getting a few S+ ranks for speedrunning it, clear a few challenge runs, earn some gameplay achievements, and do the same in the DLC. And for the 2005 original, I'll only need to earn all costumes and defeat an optional boss, since I earned most achievements when I first played it a few years ago. With that being said, let's get into the remake with playthrough number 1, focused on beating the game on normal while getting as many missable achievements as possible. The story starts with Leon recapping the events of the last 2 games, as well as what he's been up to in the 6 years since, before switching to current day where we find ourselves in Spain looking for the president's kidnapped daughter, Ashley. Along the way, one of the police officers escorting us makes a quick stop but gets distracted by some noise and goes to check it out. Since he's taking a long time, we go check on him and eventually reach an isolated house where we get attacked by a crazy local and find that he's been killed. We also find some evidence of the girl being held nearby, so we go check out the village where we find the other officer being barbecued alive. After a long combat encounter with a bunch of villagers, during which I got an achievement for parrying an attack, a church bell rings and baits them away. Some exploring allows us to destroy our first Castellan figure for another achievement, and a bit later we make it to where Ashley is supposedly being kept, but instead of finding her, we find some Spanish guy tied up. But before we can make sense of anything, a Rasputin looking guy shows up, one-shots us, and injects something in our neck. We then wake up chained to Luis, who tells us that Ashley is being held at the village church before escaping and leaving us behind. After getting all of our gear back, a merchant opens the main door and gives us our first request, and after completing it I get another achievement and some spinos to spend for rewards. A bit further up we make it to Mendez's house, the guy who whooped us earlier, where we find the key to open the town hall, and of course he shows back up to no-diff us, but we get saved by some mysterious stranger. It's obviously Ada, but Leon doesn't know that yet. Back at the village, we use the key to enter the hall, which opens up the path to the church. Unfortunately though, the main door's been locked and requires a seal to open, but some looking around reveals that it should be on the other side of the lake. On my way there, I also unlock achievements for getting 3 kills with a flash grenade by using it on some birds, another for completing my first shooting range minigame, and one more for upgrading a gun. To cross the lake we'll obviously need a boat, but it ends up by alerting a massive fish that almost eats us. Hitting it with a bunch of harpoons is enough to kill it for an achievement, and also means that we can now freely explore the area, which we'll need to do since the seal needs some hidden items to get. After collecting them I finally get it, but on my way back to the church we get attacked by a giant who's pretty easy to kill since all I have to do is damage the parasite sticking out of its back. Once it dies we're able to enter the church where we finally meet Ashley, but there's no time for small talk since a bunch of villagers are coming and we need to quickly reach an extraction point. Since Ashley can't defend herself, we need to constantly babysit her so she doesn't get kidnapped again, and preventing someone from doing so unlocks an achievement. On our way to the extraction point we end up by being chased by a ton of villagers, but thankfully Luis came back and has a house that we can use as a base to fight them off. After a pretty rough combat encounter we end up by escaping thanks to Ashley, but things quickly go bad again once she starts coughing up blood because she's been infected with the same parasites as the villagers and Leon, something called a plaga. Thankfully though, Luis seems to be able to remove them via surgery, so the plan has changed from escaping to first getting rid of the parasites. So he leaves to set things up, but on his way he runs into Ada, who asks about some amber that he's supposed to get for her in exchange for being rescued. He doesn't have it on him though, so that's another thing that he'll need to take care of. Back with Leon and Ashley, we keep progressing through the area, dealing with some more tough encounters and a chase sequence with Mendez until we reach a barn where we're cornered and finally forced to fight him. This fight is also pretty easy, with phase 1 being a close range damage check and phase 2 focused more on dodging ranged attacks. After enough bullets, Mendez goes down for an achievement and also marks the end of the village section, with one more achievement right after for getting all of the location's treasures. We're now in the second main area, the castle, and Luis calls us to meet up so he can give us some meds to slow down the parasite in the meantime. While trying to make our way inside, I also get an achievement for killing a cultist with a cannon. Inside we meet with the next main villain, the owner of the castle, Ramon Salazar, who wants to get Ashley back because they need her for their world domination plan. But since she's not really interested, we now have to fight our way through a bunch of cultists and a new blind enemy called a Garrador, which I tried to kill with just a knife for an achievement. The only one I had broke before he died though, so I'll leave that for later and killed him normally. Eventually we make it to the courtyard where the parasite starts to take over Ashley and causes us to split up, so now we have to get her back again. Further into the castle, Leon finally meets Ada, which leads to absolutely nothing, and we kill an armored giant to catch up to her so we can keep progressing towards Luis. It doesn't take too long though before a trap separates the two again, again, but this time it's Leon that needs to be saved, so we'll be playing as Ashley for a bit. All we gotta do is just make our way past some knights to get a key to free him, all while not getting hit because she gets one shot by everything. But once Leon starts to free himself, Ashley gets kidnapped again, which means I will have to go save her again. On our way to where she's being taken, we have to fight a bunch of bug monsters and even 2 Garradors at once, but eventually we make it to Salazar's throne room only to be thrown down a hole and left for dead. This obviously doesn't kill Leon, so now we have to make our way back up to the castle, and thankfully there's a merchant on the way to who we sell a treasure for over 100,000 pesetas for an achievement. Right after, we need to wait for an elevator to reach our level, and in the meantime we also have to fight Verdugo, one of Salazar's main guys, who takes a significant amount of ammo to put down for an achievement. Taking the elevator takes us to some mines where we finally reunite with Luis, who gives us the parasite suppressants, which should give us enough time to make it to the surgery. All we gotta do is get some TNT to clear a path leading to a double giant boss fight that we win by dropping them into a pit of lava, which is followed by a cool minecart section that gives an achievement if completed without taking any damage. Unfortunately, this also marks the end of Luis's role in the story because he gets killed right after by Leon's old major, Jack Krauser, who's also responsible for Ashley's initial kidnapping. During his fight, we also learned that he joined the cult for power, and because his squad was wiped out due to a lack of support from the US government, leading to his defection. We don't get to see his new power though, because we low-key get our ass whooped and get saved by a dying Luis, who gives us his lab key so we can still save ourselves. He also reveals that he used to work for Umbrella until they went under, and then helped the cult with the parasites, which is why he's trying to help us, to atone for his mistakes. Despite the goat's death though, we still have to move on if we want to save Ashley, and during the next section, where we have to ride a platform up a clock tower, I get an achievement for preventing enemies from hopping on, and another right after for getting all of the castle treasures. Now that we've caught up to Salazar, it's time to fight him, and like the previous fights, it's pretty easy since all I have to do is shoot his main body while avoiding his black goo attacks. Throwing a grenade in his mouth while he's attacking gives an achievement, and so does ending the fight. This ends the castle section, and now we have to head to a fortified island where Krauser is taking Ashley, and thankfully Ada has some keys to a boat that we can take. On their way, they talk about Raccoon City and whether the events of RE2 changed them, but instead of giving a straightforward answer, Ada says some bullshit and leaves. Since the island is run by Krauser, there's hella turrets and enemies, but we make our way through without too much difficulty and eventually find where Ashley is being held. The room's locked though, so we need to find a max level keycard to open it, and in the process I earn an achievement for fully leveling a weapon. To get the max level keycard, we actually need to upgrade a low level one, all while being hunted by new regenerating enemies, and by destroying 2 of their internal weak points at once, I earn another achievement. After getting the tier 3 card, we're able to enter Ashley's room to give her the suppressants, and a call from Ada lets us know where Luis's lab is. Before going to it though, I have to do something more important, and that's getting achievements specifically relating to the shooting range. The first one is for hitting 5 targets with 1 shot, and the other is for getting an S rank in all 12 challenges, which requires a certain amount of points earned based on performance and extra objectives. With that out the way, we can get back on track towards the lab, but of course it doesn't take too long before things go wrong again. A bit further into the island, we find a massive piece of amber containing some plaga parasites when, right on cue, the cult leader Sadler finally shows up and fully controls the parasites in our bodies, almost causing Ashley to shoot us. This leads to her getting taken again, and to get to her we need to fight Krauser for real this time. At first, the best we can do is just run around the trap infested arena that he created until we're able to fight him for a bit before he gets annoyed and reveals the power that Sadler gave him. This leads to his final phase where we have to deal with his sword and shield plaga, which is low-key pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie, but he was still pretty easy and gave an achievement after going down. With Krauser taken care of, we can get back to saving Ashley with a ton of cultists in our way, but a helicopter shows up and helps us get through the final combat intensive section. After a ton of combat and destroying an anti-air gun, we're able to move forward, but some bugs destroy the helicopter, leaving us alone for the final stretch, which is also where I get an achievement for completing all merchant requests. One last enemy encounter leads us to the main temple where we find Ashley, only to be stopped by Sadler, but Ada clutches up again, allowing us to escape. We just barely make it to the lab and manage to destroy Ashley's parasite just in time before passing out. Sometime later we wake up thanks to her removing ours, and we head towards the final boss. Before that though, I get one more achievement for picking up the final treasure. Up ahead we see that Ada's been captured, so we free her as gently as possible to fight Sadler together, but apparently he doesn't like interracial couples at all, so he whips out his true form to 1v1 us. Him being a Resident Evil boss means that all we have to do is shoot the glowing eye weak points while avoiding his toxic sludge, and after enough bullets he goes down. Not for long though, since he gets right back up as a mass of tentacles that we have to avoid for like 5 seconds until Ada gives us a one-shot rocket launcher for the second time. Killing Saddler of course unlocks an achievement. He also drops the amber that Ada was looking for, which she obviously takes, but at least she gives Leon some keys to a jet ski because the island is about to blow up and he refuses to leave with her. On her way, I also destroy the final Castellan for an achievement, which also unlocks an important weapon for later. The jet ski section serves as our final escape sequence, and completing it without taking any damage gives another achievement. The game then ends with Leon and Ashley finally heading home, but there's a Marvel post-credit scene with Ada talking to her client who wants the amber, Albert Wesker, who somehow survived this shit in RE1. She has a change of heart though because she low-key doesn't vibe with his plan of killing billions, so she takes the amber somewhere else. With the game fully over now, I get the achievement for beating it on normal to end my first playthrough. Before starting the next one, I have to buy a knife from the points shop that I unlocked by destroying the Castellans and fully upgrading it to make it unbreakable, because the next playthrough will not just be a knife only, but also a no heal or merchant run. And thanks to the strong ass unbreakable knife, plus playing unassisted, this multi-challenge run was extremely easy, also largely in part because RE4 doesn't require full knife only. Pistols are also allowed. Since this is a new game plus, I'm able to keep my maxed out pistol to deal with anything too annoying for the knife, and assisted regens my health up to yellow, which is still pretty low compared to previous games that took you to roughly half health. There weren't any standout difficult sections, and since the story doesn't change, there really isn't too much to talk about in this playthrough apart from finally getting the achievement for killing a Garrador with only a knife, so let's just skip to the end. As I mentioned before, I got the knife and pistol only, the no heal and the no merchant, but I also managed to beat the game in under 8 hours for the sprinter achievement. Playthrough number 3 will just be to beat the game on professional, which makes resources rarer, enemies a lot harder, and there are no autosaves, but the goal isn't an achievement, but rather items that I'll use for the S plus playthroughs, but more on that in a bit. Given the added difficulty, I had to play a bit safer than before and make sure to save to not lose half an hour of progress, but once again there weren't any moments worth mentioning, especially because the 2 previous playthroughs taught me the game enough to not struggle too much. Also, I kinda used an infinite ammo rocket launcher that ran me 2 million pesetas in New Game Plus 2, which kinda circumvents any difficulty from professional since it one-shots everything, but that's neither here nor there. With that being said, ending this playthrough gave me achievements for hardcore and professional clears. But like I said, the main objectives were items unlocked by getting an A rank on both difficulties, but on pro they stack, reducing the total playthroughs I had to do. These were for the Chicago Sweeper, a Tommy gun that can get infinite ammo when fully upgraded, and a suit of armor for Ashley that makes her invincible and unkidnappable. These 2 items managed to make getting an S plus rank in regular and hardcore very easy, along with some big time-saving strats like destroying the AA gun with grenades, since S plus requires sub 5 and sub 5.5 hour playthroughs. After beating these 2 final playthroughs, since they don't stack outside of professional, I got the 2 S plus achievements. One last base game achievement is for collecting all weapons, and the only one missing is unlocked by beating professional without using bonus weapons like the sweeper or the knife from earlier. Thankfully though, Capcom gave us a much easier and faster way to unlock it in a free update that added the Mercenaries game mode. All I have to do is get an S rank in the 3 original maps by meeting the points requirements by keeping a kill streak going for long enough, and after doing so, I unlock it and get the achievement after using it in game. Now all that's left for the remake is the Separate Ways DLC that shows what Ada was doing during the story, so like with the main game, we'll start with a standard mode playthrough. We start by freeing Luis from the cultists because we need him to get the amber, and immediately after fight one of Salazar's top guys, who seems a lot more overpowered than the one that Leon fought. After fighting him off, we head to the church where we're supposed to meet up with Luis, but of course he's not there, so at least we take the time to ring the bell to help out Leon. Some time passes, so we start looking for him, and at the village we run into the bug guy again, who runs a tougher fight this time, but we still managed to fight him off. Not long after, we make it to Mendez's house where Luis's signal was last found, explaining why she was there to save Leon, and we find documents saying that he's probably being held at the factory. Before leaving though, Mendez pulls up, forcing us to run away until we reach the factory. factory. By this point, Leon and Luis already escaped, but at least he left us his radio frequency so we can talk and agree on a new meetup spot. But as we leave, we pass out because we got infected at one point, and we wake up sometime later with Wesker, who's not happy with Ada taking her time. After that, we leave the house to see Luis, but are forced to fight a giant that was also harder than Leon's, but at least we get an achievement for it. The meeting with him is the same one we saw in the main game, and after it, we head to the castle so he can get the amber and the suppressants, which kinda pisses Ada off because he's wasting her time. She agrees to it though because she's also infected, and low-key for Leon too, let's be honest. Unfortunately though, his whole stash got burnt, so now we need to find ingredients so he can make more. After finding all three, he makes some suppressants for Ada just in time because the bug guy comes back. But once he leaves, we make our way through to the sewers to make it to his boss arena and finally fight him for real. Phase 1 was pretty easy since he was pretty slow and predictable, though tanky, but at least there were some pretty stacked resource boxes to top up our ammo. Phase 2 on the other hand was probably the hardest boss in the whole game because he's pretty quick, covers the whole arena in proximity mines, spawns in bugs mid-fight, and is also pretty tanky. He still went down first try though for an achievement. This is also when Krauser kills Luis and takes the amber, so now we have to chase him to the island. After the boat ride with Leon, we make it to the island where Wesker now asks us very politely to also blow up the island, which we accept for the greater payout. So now we have to make it to the radio tower that's past this fuck-ass turret section, and inside we get chased by this lizard brute monster that we just barely avoid so we can make it to the control room and rig the island to blow up somehow. Ada starts to feel conflicted though, so she sabotages the plan and sets only part of it to blow up instead. Then as we escape, the lizard shows back up, but we manage to cut it up with some defense lasers. Now that we're on a timer, we go help out Leon so he can escape, then we fight Sadler ourselves in a much more interesting and enjoyable fight than before, actually having to interact with his attacks. Even though we beat him for an achievement, Ada still needs to be captured so Leon can save her. After he does so, we make our way past a ton of enemies to get him the rocket launcher so he can finish Sadler off. We then take the amber and leave to see the same end cutscene as before and get an achievement for beating the DLC on normal. But this time there's a bit more to the scene because we see that Wesker has Krauser's corpse, so he's still got a sample of the plagas, which from what I understand leads into RE5. Now it's time for the second DLC playthrough on professional with the goal of getting an A rank for the Chicago Sweeper again because I'll have to get a Pro S plus after. Like with the base game, I have to beat it in under 4 hours to unlock it, and since it's a new game plus, it's pretty easy and quick, so I'ma skip to the end for the hardcore and professional clear achievements. The Chicago Sweeper is just as OP as before, especially once upgraded to infinite ammo, making all bosses, especially the bug guy, an absolute joke. That, paired with good routing and time-saving strats, the sub 2.5 hour run wasn't as bad as it sounds, and I was able to get it on my first try for the final and rarest achievement in the Resident Evil 4 remake. With that done, we can go back to the original RE4 for its remaining achievements, which, as a reminder, are for unlocking all costumes and killing Verdugo before the mines. The first set of costumes was earned for just beating the game, which I already had, and the second is for beating Separate Ways. Some differences between both versions of Ada's side of the story is that the remake adds the giant and bug guy fights, whereas the original had you fighting Krauser, who plays a bigger role in it because he was also working for Wesker and already knew Ada from before. Since the base game story is also fairly different, Separate Ways has to change as well to fit the main plot, with many sections being changed or straight up removed in the remake, like the ship area or the start being moved to the village instead of the castle. The overall story stays the same though, with Ada getting the amber and betraying Wesker, although it was a lot less obvious and less heavy on her personal choice and more on the organization she works for. After beating the extra mode, because it wasn't DLC back in 2005, I get the costume set for the achievement. As for the Verdugo achievement, it was a lot easier than how I did it in the remake because I used a rocket launcher after freezing him to get the one shot to avoid a long and resource draining fight. I would go through the whole playthrough again, but with the biggest differences being in the gameplay, Luis's character, and some sections in between major story beats that stay mostly the same, there isn't much of a point in my opinion, especially since I already got the achievements out the way. With that being said, completing both games was a lot of fun, and I definitely see why it gets the glazing that it does. Me personally, I prefer the remake because it feels better to play and has better achievements, but the original is still really good and is worth playing today. It took about 60 hours to get all of these achievements and was overall a 5 out of 10 in difficulty, but having to do all these different playthroughs is starting to get a bit old, so hopefully future games chill on that a bit. The next video will be on RE5, so make sure to subscribe to not miss it or any future games I complete. Thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.